Just 2 years ago, thousands of war refugees crossed the harsh edge of the Sahara, fleeing for their lives. Today, those same people are transforming desolation into hope. With support from the Chadian government, which has granted them land, they're using innovative farming and reforestation techniques to turn dry desert soil into fertile ground, growing food, rebuilding communities, and proving that even in the world's most barren landscapes, life can take root again. The impact of this project could be enormous. Around the world, more than 43 million refugees face uncertain futures, their lives hanging in the balance. But here, in one of the harshest regions on Earth, a new possibility is emerging, a model that could reshape how we respond to the global refugee crisis. I'm traveling across the Sahel with the United Nations World Food Program, the world's largest humanitarian agency, and the first to respond when hunger strikes amid war and disaster. What I came to the border of Sudan to see is the mind-blowing work they're doing to actually help solve this refugee crisis. But the thing is, these are not easy places to get to. I visited during the rainy season, when intense monsoon storms often wash out entire roads and cause massive flooding. But it's these seasonal rains that are actually harnessed by the refugees to turn the brown desert green. So the WFP invited me along on this mission to tell this critical story that almost no one knows about. And in this 4-part series, I'm explaining the details of some of the most important work of our time. And first off, you really need to understand some history. In 2023, a conflict broke out in Sudan that has become the biggest war on Earth. In Sudan, fighting between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces have been reported. Intense battles in Khartoum and other cities have raged on. The violence has displaced millions of people, with nearly 11 million now internally displaced and close to 3 million seeking refuge in other countries. Aid workers in Chad say urgent assistance is needed for refugees there. 600,000 refugees fled over the border into Chad. And that's in addition to 400,000 refugees who came over from the 2004 war in Darfur and never went back to Sudan. So we're talking about over 1 million displaced people in this area of Chad. We took a helicopter and touched down in one of the larger refugee camps of about 45,000 people. We received a greeting like I had never seen before. What's your impression? It's intense, you know? It's like very emotional. And it really hit me. These are just regular people from all walks of life who had a really horrible thing happen to them. And they suddenly found themselves arriving in a foreign land. A country with minimal infrastructure, significant economic difficulties, and a desertifying landscape. This has been incredibly taxing on the government and society of Chad. But in spite of Chad's lack of resources, they're not meeting these refugees with the type of animosity that we see in other parts of the world. They are greeting them with hospitality. And it makes me wonder, why are things different here? With this program for the first year, we've been providing humanitarian crisis assistance. But very quickly, we want to make sure we're going to create jobs, local production of food, and have communities that can be thriving again instead of receiving assistance. Here, the government has really been very generous when it comes to welcoming refugees, settling them. I think this is just part of the hospitality of the Chadians, which is well known in the region. The government of Chad is recognizing that these are people with skills who want better lives. So Chad has invited them to join the country's lofty goals of restoring 4 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. And as a bold gesture of goodwill, the government of Chad has actually committed 100,000 hectares of land to these people. transforming desertified landscapes into abundant and resilient food systems. And you're about to find out exactly how they do it. They are using simple water harvesting techniques here to transform barren desert into abundant farms. We went deep into this during the first episode from Niger, but there's still a lot more to understand. You see, when you have barren, compacted soils and when it rains, the water just washes over the land quickly without soaking in. The rushing water carries away soil and bits of organic material like seeds, leaves, twigs, dead bugs, and so on. But when you build water harvesting half-moons, then the rain soaks in and all of that organic material collects in the half-moon. This layer acts like a sponge that soaks up water and blankets the bare soil. And this creates a wonderful habitat for soil organisms. These tiny soil organisms then break down the moist organic material into compost. The compost enriches the soil and the water cools and moistens the vicinity of the half-moon. And in a hot, dry desert, this cool, moist soil is a wonderful place for crops to grow. These crops don't need extra fertilizers because the soil is now fertile. And because of all the moisture stored in the soil during the rainy season, the growing season is extended far into the dry season, where moisture can remain even during drought. The plants are also healthier from the extra water and nutrients, making them fast-growing and resistant to pests and diseases, avoiding the need for expensive fertilizers and pesticides. Radia from Sudan and Mariam from Chad have just been describing that this was a totally barren, dry field. There are 120 families working together to design this landscape. These cascading half-moons catch water and nutrient, creating an environment that is boosting the production here of sorghum that they've planted. The growing season here can be extended because there's enough residual moisture in the ground to feed these crops even long after the rains end. This entire site is planted in sorghum, which is a staple grain that's native to northeastern Africa. Sorghum is an annual crop, meaning it's planted and harvested in one season and then needs to be replanted every year. But that also means that it's immediately producing calories for food-insecure people. Producing food right now is critical for addressing the emergency of a huge influx of refugees into a barren desert. Now this is just a 100-hectare site, and it's only in its first years of production. But this is just the beginning of a much larger project. The grand design for the 100,000 hectares will end up looking a lot more like there is a mosaic of trees, grasses, and annual crops. To support the people, this will include growing feed for livestock, growing wood for cooking and building, and growing different types of medicinal and edible plants. To restore the ecosystem, this means getting the ground covered with vegetation and establishing forests that protect the soil, store water, and provide habitat. This is a design that will not only feed people, but also stop the encroachment of the Sahara Desert. Stopping the southern expansion of the Sahara is the goal of the Great Green Wall of Africa, which is a mega project to plant a strip of vegetation across the entire continent. The nation of Chad is critical to growing the Great Green Wall, and their decision to welcome these refugees is feeding into their commitment to restore 4 million hectares of degraded land by 2030. There is an asylum law which has been adopted in the country, giving rights to refugees to have access to land. They are giving them right to walk. 400,000 refugees was already a heavy toll on Chad, and with the new conflict in Sudan, it's an additional 600,000 people that have crossed the border, arriving in a complete state of despair in an area where the natural resources are already not great, where there are floods, droughts, and a lot of displacements around those areas. The landscape in this part of Chad is highly degraded with scarce food and water, and within that scarcity there's a huge risk that conflict could arise between local Chadians and the resettled Sudanese. Instead of giving up, these communities are doing something extraordinary, working side by side to bring dead land back to life. Families from Sudan and Chad, once divided by borders and conflict, are now united by purpose, restoring fertility to one of the most degraded landscapes on Earth. Their effort isn't just about growing crops, it's about growing hope. The knowledge, resilience, and vision these women carry will nourish not only their soil but also their families and generations to come. This project has completely changed the way I see the world. Here in the Sahel, millions of lives have been uprooted, and yet, beneath the vast scale of crisis, each person holds a story, one of loss, strength, and determination. Despite everything they've endured, these people are rebuilding both land and life. And what's happening here isn't just a local success. It's a model of regeneration that could be applied anywhere on the planet. My deepest hope is that this story reminds us all, even in the face of destruction, we can choose creation. We can build a future where humans and nature don't just survive, they thrive together.